And here we are. Welcome back to the Redshirt Sophomore podcast, where we never sit out. I'm your host, Matthew Dawson, joining again today, as always, C to the D, co-host Chris Dawson. Week 5 in the books, week 6 on the horizon. We're almost at the midway point of the season. What happened?
We learned a lot. And in September, we're into October, conference play, right? We're getting in there. We got some big time rivalry games this week, specifically in the state of Texas. Obviously, you know more than anybody. Texas A&M hosts a huge game. Kyle Field will be pumping. You got the Cotton Bowl over there, the state fair, and with OU in Texas. And then, honestly, other places, a lot of good games. Missouri and LSU will cover. Washington State, UCLA will cover. Kentucky at UGA, a struggling UGA team. Are they on upset alert? We'll see. We'll talk about that. I don't think so quite. But we'll tell you why. Notre Dame at Louisville, and then we'll Maryland, Ohio State, and then even a group of 5 matchup. So
A
we'll stay tuned.
little Mountain West special. How about
So
that, baby?
Stay tuned to that for sure. That'll be a surprise for you guys. Maybe you'll guess it, maybe you won't, but yeah, we got a lot to talk about today.
Got a lot to talk about. 8 games. We did 9 last week, but we wanted to talk about 8. And if you guys want us to talk about other games that we didn't talk about, right, or other teams, hey, make sure you email us, right? The redshirtsophomore@gmail.com. Add us at Twitter, the Redshirt Soft, or put a comment on this video or any of the other videos, right? Hey, why didn't you cover Nebraska this week? Right? Could you cover them maybe next week? Yeah, we've done that before. We accommodate to you guys. We want to talk about what we want to talk about, but of course, we want to talk about things if you're interested in talking about it. So thank you guys so much for the support. These last couple of weeks, it's really been awesome. So with that all being said, let's get into it. Let's talk about a little Red River rivalry, baby. Oklahoma versus Texas. Texas being favored by 6, and the hook. It's not touching 7 right now. It's not touching 7. How do we feel about this game, CD?
I mean, just incredibly excited about it. Obviously, the 11 a.m. kickoff, I love because my Minnesota Gophers are playing at the nightcap there on NBC against Michigan. So I'll get a chance to watch this game. Obviously, I'll be up and going to see what happens there. I don't have a great feel because I think we've all been really impressed with both of these teams. I think more so with Texas because of that signature win against Alabama. But Oklahoma, in their own right, has looked really impressive. A completely different football team than just 1 year ago in year 1 with Brent Venables, which we kind of saw coming with the jump in athleticism from year 1 to year 2. We did a whole second-year coaches draft where we had a huge emphasis on what happens from year 1 to year 2 with football coaches, college football coaches, right? And obviously Oklahoma's seeing the effect so far. Does it continue this week? Obviously, it's a rivalry game. You never know what's going to happen. I'm just going to stick a rivalry game. If I had to call this game, I'm going to take the team I just think is a better team. The 2 deeps are just better. I'm going to go Texas to win, but I do think they're going to cover. I've been kind of going back and forth on this game. I'm still really impressed with Dylan Gabriel and the work that he's done, and I think their passing game can get some work on maybe a vulnerable and a little bit beat up Texas secondary right now. But I think Texas is so talented. I think Quinn Ewers, last year we saw him light him up in this game. Obviously, the Oklahoma defense is going to be out for blood after half 100 being hung on them last year. But when you got Xavier Worthy, you got A.D. Mitchell, maybe Sanders coming back healthy, who knows? But there's so many pieces there. Yeah, and I obviously he's a huge impact guy, but they have other weapons there, multiple running backs, multiple wide receivers. Obviously, Sark, good old line that's coming together every week. But I do think the difference maker and what we talked about with this Texas team all year is the defense, especially the defensive line. That's what's going to win in this game. Getting pressure on Dylan Gabriel. We saw Dylan Gabriel struggle a little bit with a really good defensive line in Cincinnati, right? You called that happening. You said their interior pressure is going to give him fits being a smaller quarterback. And I think Texas sees that on film. Now, obviously, Jeff Lebby and Dylan Gabriel will obviously try to scheme around that. outside quick passes, move in the pocket, do whatever they can, to give Dylan Gabriel a better line of vision and a cleaner pocket, obviously. But I do think Texas is going to win because of that defense playing at an elite level right now.
And I'm gonna go ahead and ride with you there as well. And like I'm not so sure. I think Oklahoma's defense has played really, really well, but I'm not sure it's perfect, right? I also think Oklahoma. I think it's very underrated that they've kind of been one dimensional. They haven't really actually run the ball all that well. They did not run the ball well in Cincinnati. They did not run the ball well in SMU. I mean, Marcus Major, the number one running back right now, is averaging 3.9 yards per carry.
Can't happen. That cannot
Can't
happen
happen.
against Texas.
And they've had opportunities to run the ball. They've been no short of opportunities to run the ball being up in all these games. So I do think this offense can be explosive. I just do think Texas's defense is that good. I think, like you said, I think the interior pressure that Texas is going to give them is going to be absolutely a nightmare for Dylan Gabriel. I think it's going to be a nightmare. And I think Texas can do everything. I think they can run. Jonathan Brooks right now is one of the best running backs in college football. That's no secret. And I don't know that Oklahoma is going to be able to stop them, right? I don't know that Oklahoma. I haven't seen. They did a good job stopping Corey Kiner, Cincinnati. I think they really did. But then again,
It's also Emory Jones, and
Emory Jones is
no
struggling to throw
shade
the
to Emory
ball.
Jones, but it's not Quinn Ewers.
Yeah, it's not Quinn Ewers. It's also not Steve Sarkisian. So I think Steve Sarkisian is going to get up for this game for sure. I think Oklahoma gets up for this game as well. I do think this, if Oklahoma's defense shows up, which I think there's a chance it does. I think this could still kind of be a slugfest. I don't know that we're going to see a ton of explosive plays that we're maybe used to in this game. I think this might just be really gritty rivalry game, and I love it. And we've talked about this. This is the one rivalry game where it's okay to play it in the Cotton Bowl because of the history of
Yeah.
that stadium and because of
Yep.
the atmosphere of that stadium being like almost like a high school stadium makes it awesome. Makes it
Mm-hmm.
awesome. That field has not changed in, I mean, like how many years? I don't even know. I don't even know. But yeah, give me Texas. Lame for our picks. Uh, yeah. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I'll add on to your point about Texas being able to stop the run and Oklahoma struggling to get the running game going, especially with those running backs. Chase McClellan and Roydell Williams for Alabama averaged less than 3.5 yards per carry, right? And if Oklahoma is going to win this game and give themselves a chance to win this game and stay in it for 4 quarters, they have to do better than that. And obviously, Bama's O line at the time was not playing great, but maybe it was just because Texas defensive line made them look bad. That's also a possibility. And while Oklahoma's O line I think has played good for the most part, it's going to be their biggest test by far. With Texas, I think Cincinnati was a good test for sure, but Texas different animal with Ant Hill coming off the edge as well, and doing the fun things I like to do with him. But a good point you brought up there is Oklahoma's defense keeping them in it. I think I love their secondary. I love Woody Washington. I love obviously Peyton Bowen, the freshman, and then of course, you know, Billy Bowman, maybe the best player on their team there in the secondary. So those guys against the elite weapons of Texas is going to be really, really fun to watch. And obviously we'll keep an eye on that. But I think Texas up front has a little advantage with their O line playing the way they are. Like you mentioned, Jonathan Brooks playing well. Steve Sarkisian, I think, is going to commit to running the football. They've blown leads in this game before, right? Everyone remembers 2 years ago the shootout that was Bijan Robinson doing his thing, Caleb Williams coming in that game and carrying them to a victory. This different Texas football team. Obviously Oklahoma, different team. No more Lincoln Riley, no more Caleb Williams. And obviously their defense is probably a lot better than it was 2 years ago. But I think Texas is built to finish games, and I think I took the over on both these teams back in the preseason. The win total, right? I'm very high on both of them, and so I'm not shading Oklahoma. I just think Texas is a really, really good football team right now, maybe the best in the country, and they're going to show that this weekend.
Let's talk Aggies and let's talk Crimson Tide. The Alabama Crimson Tide roll into Kyle Field for a 2:30 Central start. And once again, for the third straight year, Texas A&M is playing Alabama with their backup quarterback.
Come on. It's
Both
and I love. I'll real quick. I'll say this, and I know you're our Texas A&M fan, obviously a student currently there. You know just about everything about the program. A fan can know, but no shade to Max Johnson. I love Max Johnson. I think he's gritty as hell. I love the way he plays football. Ton of SEC experience. We've seen him light up really good defenses with LSU, right? And even A&M last week against Arkansas played really well. But Connor Weidman was a rising star in this game, and it is unjust. It is so sickening to see that injury happen to him, and then also to deprive us from games like this he would have had to play against a really really good defense in Alabama. And I'll let you continue.
let me ask you this. Do you think this line's flipped if Wigman's playing this game?
Well,
I
no,
don't see. I don't think so. I
no,
don't think
no,
so. I
no, no,
think
no.
this line is the exact same.
Yeah, yeah.
It opened at 2.5. Alabama minus 2.5. I
I
think
think it
that
would have maybe it would have opened at 1.5. It probably would have settled right here like it is. I do think some of the money coming in is just Kyle Field, man. How do you put a point percentage on it in big games if you're Vegas? Because you cannot over adjust for it. Because then if A&M's favored in this game, then you're gonna lose so much money on one side, right? For Vegas, for you guys who don't really aren't familiar with betting lines, right? Their goal is to get even money on both sides. With the way that odds work, with betting spreads, is that if it's even money on both sides, they're gonna make money no matter what, and that's their goal, obviously. Um, but yeah,
they move
it's
when the
just
market moves. You know,
yeah,
it's
exactly,
it's
exactly.
a fluid market. I will say so. Both these teams lost week 2 to an undefeated Miami team and an undefeated Texas team. Both of those teams look like really, really good teams right now. And I think both of these teams are entirely different teams right now than they were back then. Completely Texas A&M's case, right? 7 sacks in each of the last 2 conference games. The last team to do that, I don't know. There's been 3 in the history of the SEC. So that's like pretty crazy. Uh, that's a wild stat right there. DJ Durkin finding ways to get pressure. The secondary still doesn't look amazing, but if that front 7, that linebacker play keeps playing the way they do, goodness gracious, right? And they're finding a run game identity, right? Le'Veon Moss has kind of been their go-to back these last 2 games. Finally surpassed 100 yards this past week. He looks really good, and he's physical, and you kind of need that in a game against Alabama, right? You know, like Isaiah Spiller 2 years ago when they won, Isaiah Spiller got a lot of carries. A&M never abandoned the run game. They didn't run it all that well, though, but they just never abandoned it, right? Giving us those 3rd and shorts, right, that you're able to convert, even with a quarterback like Zach Calzada. Stray.
Oh,
There goes a stray bullet. There goes a stray bullet. And then Alabama. We look at their loss against Texas. We blame their offensive line. We blame Jalen Monroe. Mississippi State last week, their offensive line looked fine. They looked like they were blocking better in the run game. And they're like, oh, we're not really good at pass blocking. So here's what we're not going to do. We're not going to throw the ball. Jalen Monroe threw the ball 12 times against Mississippi State. So I think Alabama is going to really try to stick to the run game. A&M has been really good defending the run this year, which is way different than it was last year. You can credit that to more experienced defensive line and more skilled linebackers. Notice how I didn't say DJ Durkin. We're not more experienced linebackers, better linebacker play. There's more talent there this year in that front 7. And I don't know. Is Jason McClellan going to be able to run the ball against Texas A&M? Are they going to rely too heavily on Jalen Monroe's legs for this game? Bama on the road. Is Bama, who's struggled with some big time penalties in some certain games, are they going to struggle? Are they going to commit some bad penalties on the road? I think they do. As a homer, sounds like a terrible pick, but I don't see how you can't take A&M plus 1.5 and just go ahead and give me them to win the ball game at Kyle Field. Max Johnson's been playing really good. I think Texas A&M in this game has arguably, I'm going to say the word arguably in the comments. If you want to argue with me about this, you can argue with me about it. The better quarterback, the better offensive line, the better defensive line right now, and better weapons at receiver. I think that those are all arguments that you can make, and those are things that I believe. So I'm going to take this Texas A&M team to win this ball game.
Wow. And I don't hate that. Like, obviously, I don't think many people do either. I've seen a lot of people taking A&M. Obviously, the spread is 1.5. So, like, it's supposed to be a really, really good game. I don't think it's a bad pick to pick either one of these teams. That's why it's such a close line. You bring up the fact that they both lost in week 2. A lot of very, very upset fans. A lot of, people thought in these that loss was going to snowball into a lot of other losses. And so far it hasn't. Since that game, obviously, the week after, Bama did not look great against UCF or USF. They played their backup quarterbacks. It was a really weird week, and everyone's like, "What the heck?" They bounced back with 2 really good wins, impressive wins. I'll say impressive wins. Ole Miss, obviously, a very impressive, very good win. Mississippi State was a very dominant win, which they needed, and they haven't really had in a while. And A&M, obviously, the past 2 weeks playing against at home against Auburn, and then also playing neutral site against Arkansas, dominating wins. I thought, especially defensively there. I do think in terms of the impact of what happens before I give my prediction, on one of these teams has to lose, right? We know that, and one of these fan bases and coaching staffs are going to get ridiculed no matter what, and it's so frustrating because this is supposed to be a really good game. It could be a 1-point game, and that doesn't change who either of these coaches and these teams are. I don't think, right? But because they already have that one blemish on their record, right? And the other team gets right in the driver's seat, right in the driver's seat of the SEC West. With the way LSU's playing right now, with Bama having already beat Ole Miss, right? With Tennessee, who both these teams play later in the year, not looking great, I believe. Right? When was the last time? Okay, so when A&M beat Bama 2 years ago, right? Nobody really thought they had it in them to run the table in the West because of the quarterback play, because Calzada played, a fantastic game for one game. The rest of the year, he was not good, like at all. Nope, like he was not very good. Right?
Yeah, you're telling me.
This year, though, it's a different A&M roster. It's a different quarterback, different offensive scheme in general. The defense is playing really, really well. And Bama, obviously, people are lower on them as years pass, but I think win on the road at Cal Field, where they've struggled on the road in big games the past 3 years since 2020, that would be huge for them. And this is, I think, both teams' toughest test the rest of the way through. And that doesn't mean they're going to win every other game just because they win one game, but it means that this is a huge win and it'd be a huge boost for both these teams. I'm going to go Alabama here. I do think that Bama's D line is going to give Max Johnson problems. I know you mentioned the O line for A&M. I didn't love the way they played against Miami. I thought they played fine, and it wasn't the offense, right? The defense got torched. The secondary got torched. One thing Jalen Monroe does really, really well is throw the deep ball, and we saw Tyler Van Dyke and Xavier Restrepo and other receivers really, really torch him on vertical passes, and I think Jalen Monroe can do that. I think though the keys here for both teams. If you're Bama, Milroe has to be in the teens for passing the football. And if you've been a Bama fan the last 10 years, that has not been the normal, right? They've been throwing the football a lot ever since Lane Kiffin got there with Blake Sims, right? They've been throwing the football a lot. And a lot of times they're throwing the football has been their primary option, their best options. Not this year, not against this A&M team with the way they're rushing the passer right now. And if you run the ball effectively, that's where your play action happens. That's where you can take advantage of these linebackers. And we've seen it time and time again the past 2 years with this A&M football team. Their defense has been vulnerable at linebacker and then in the vertical passing game if they get gashed in the run, right? The past 2 weeks, they have not. They've shut them down. And in credit to A&M, I do think Bama's going to be fired up to play this football game. I really do. I do not think much different feeling than 2 years ago. We were both there for that game. We felt the atmosphere in College Station there. It was a 3-touchdown game. It was a 3-score game. This is a much different feeling. Bama is not going to be overlooking anybody this week. They know exactly what they're getting into. I think Jalen Monroe is going to have a good game. I think that defense, right, that secondary for Bama versus the strength of A&M's offense in their wide receiver room is going to be really fun to watch. I guess that's all I can really say. It's more of a gut feeling. I think Bama's going to continue to be peaking and ascending, and this is no shame to A&M. And unfortunately, if they lose this game, Jimbo Fisher is going to be right on the warm seat again. People are going to be frustrated with him and Bobby.
Which is wild.
Petrino and DJ Durkin.
Because I mean, last year I get, but like for the team this year, right? I mean, it feels like Petrino was the right hire. Maybe could argue that you get a different defensive coordinator, but
Durkin's played well. And here's what I'll say about Durkin.
Yeah.
The past 2 weeks he's done really well. Obviously, take Miami out, but that's also like Bama has like, and Kirby Smart gives up big, like Ohio's, like teams in college football score points. That's just what happens these days. I think what DJ Durkin needs to do to confuse Jalen Monroe is to change the picture on him. He cannot read defenses very well. He really can't. Right? You don't have to necessarily blitz them. I think with the 4 or 5 guys that you got, you can get to him. You can get pressure and contain him. Right? If you do that right, if you stay in your lanes, you push the pocket and you collapse the pocket on him instead of leaving gaping holes for him to run through. And you have athletic linebackers, especially Torian York. I think that can spy him and get to him. But I think changing the picture here, force some turnovers, confusing them. But I do think if you're in 2nd and 3, right, it's a lot harder to change the picture on them than in 2nd and 11, right? And that's where you're going to thrive if you're A&M, to get those big time negative plays.
Yeah, I think the winner of this game is the team that hits the explosive play. I think it's going to be a nitty gritty game. I don't think there's going to be a lot of points scored. The total opened at 49, and it is down to 46.5. So
yeah,
I think you can tell where the public's going with that as well.
give me one player on A&M who makes that explosive play. Is it Anaya Smith? Who missed this game last year, by the way.
He did miss this game last year.
Where's Moose Muhammad been all year? I feel like
Yeah.
he's a guy that you'd love to get him more involved.
Well, he's a slot guy. It's for Mooses. I think it's Noah Thomas. I think his size.
Okay.
I don't know. That's literally just a dart on the dartboard. It could be any of those guys. That's why I like those weapons.
Well, last year it was a true freshman, Terrion Arnold, getting kind of picked on by a true freshman, Evan Stewart. Now, Terrion Arnold is playing really well right now, I think, in his year 2. Yeah, it's in terms of special teams, who has the edge in this game?
That's a great question, because like PFF has A&M like graded really high in special teams. In fact, they've graded like top 10 in the country. Special teams is what put them ahead in the Miami game, and then also put them behind, right? That kick return. I do think Texas A&M has the edge in the special teams. I think Will Reichard is the edge. Has the edge in the kicking game there, but I think Nick Constantino has got an absolute boot. I think the punt coverage team has done a great job this year. I think punt return team and punt block. Yep. I think in that aspect, right, kickoff has had its issues, right? But I think in terms of the punting game, I think A&M has the advantage there.
Yeah, and Kool-Aid McKinstry is a very explosive return man in his own right. But we saw Nia Smith last game, right, and what he can do. He seems like he's getting more and more healthy every week. I would love for him, and this is obviously would hurt my prediction. I'd love for him to make a special play on special teams. We saw A-Chain, right, 2 years ago, after Bama gets a game-changing play, right? I think they blocked
on theirs. Yeah, this special teams matchup is going to be pretty awesome.
And then Devin A-Chain. So don't forget about that while you're watching this game. Something's going to happen. It's going to be a 4-quarter fight. Jimbo and Nick Saban, that beef too. No one's really talked about that, by the way. I haven't heard much about that beef. Obviously, they buried the hatchet, and it was definitely overblown. But this is what storyline, man. That's why you love college football. You love these rivalries. You love it, man. You love it.
Let's talk about the Fighting Irish going into Louisville. Wow, man. Louisville Cardinals, for the competition that they've played well, right? Notre Dame has been in some dogfights, including back-to-back week dogfights at Duke, home versus Ohio State. Notre Dame gets some receivers back. That's huge for their passing game, which has not looked very good the last couple of weeks.
Mm-hmm.
But Louisville's got out of a dogfight of their own. They do get the extra day's rest because they played on Friday last week. But NC State shut down Jawar Jordan. And in the first half, shut down Jack Plummer. And Louisville hit some plays. Jack Plummer, a guy, Jeff Brown, finding a way to win that ball game. Of course, this line is at 6. I will go ahead and take Notre Dame to win. And I will also take them to cover.
Wow.
What's crazy is that I remember you said at the beginning of the season, in our preseason, when we both took Louisville's over, you had said that you believe Louisville is going to win this game. I'm curious to see if that's still the case.
I'll say Notre Dame has looked better than I thought they were going to look, and I give them a ton of credit for beating or for being right there at the end with Ohio State. Right, maybe should have won that game if you can count to 11, but also and then coming back from behind into going into Duke. I know Duke's not a crazy hostile environment, but that's a really good Duke team. A healthy Ryan Leonard, Mike Elko at defensive head coach. Very tough. And I don't blame Sam Hartman for the passing struggles. I think he does bounce back here. I just do not like the schedule dynamic. I really don't. I'm gonna take Louisville to win, and I'm gonna take him to cover. I do think for different reasons than I was at during the preseason. I think Louisville is playing really good football right now. Yes, the NC State game it's a weird Friday night game. It was on the road. You come back home, you get the extra day's rest. Schedule dynamics here favor Louisville. And with 18 to 22-year-old kids who you get 12 separate games every year in the regular season, that just matters. That stuff matters. And that's why I'm going to take Louisville. Notre Dame, again, think about this stretch. Ohio State, nail biter. Duke, nail biter. Then they have to go to Louisville, and you're looking in the back of your mind, you're looking ahead at USC next year, who you circled on your schedule after losing to Ohio State. You're like, we have to beat this team to make the college football playoffs. And while you have a really good football team right here in Louisville, who albeit, maybe hasn't beaten the best of football teams right so far, but they're 5-0, right? Jack Plummer's playing really good football. That Georgia Tech win I thought was really impressive in week 1, right? Indiana, whatever, is not very good. Boston College, they spanked like everybody else except Florida State, But like, I do think this is a good football team for Louisville. I think you got to get Jordan going in the running game. You gotta. Jack Plummer will get his. Jamari Thrash will get his. Obviously, it's a good secondary for Notre Dame. But yeah,
Very good secondary.
I think Jeff Brown's gonna have some schemes, some plays open. I think Jack Plummer has some explosive plays early, and they'll kind of jump on Notre Dame, and then from there, it's just gonna be tough to get back. For Notre Dame.
Yeah, I will say, but I will say this though, Jack Plummer, while he's been good in some games, he's been a little inconsistent. Georgia Tech, Boston College games, you combine those games, 8 touchdowns, 1 interception. So what does it look like for the rest of his games?
No.
Well, that'd be 3 touchdowns to 5 interceptions in those other games. So even if you just take away the Boston College game, right, you're looking at a guy that's 6 passing touchdowns, 6 interceptions, not impressing you too much. And it looked like their running game, which had been super explosive up until last week, kind of got shut down there. I think Notre Dame's defense has been what's impressing everyone. I did not think super highly of Notre Dame's defense this year going into it. I thought that they might be good. I didn't know that they were going to look like this. I think their secondary has been amazing. I mean, even Marvin Harrison Jr., even kind of like not shutting him down, but like, look, Jamari Thrash.
Though. He really shut him down.
Jamari Thrash is in for some work today. He's in for some work. And he got shut down. NC State's cornerbacks are insane. And by the way, NC State's safeties were injured. You left Aiden White on an island there with Jamari Thrash, and he handled business. As much as I love Jamari Thrash.
Yeah, this show is very pro Jamari Thrash.
Oh, yeah.
I think it was awesome last week to see Chris. And you were on him, well in the preseason, right, when he transferred over there. Seeing Chris Bell last week make some big time plays for him. Another guy step up. I think it's huge because we saw Emeka Buka for Ohio State get to him in the slot, get to him right, the second option there, and obviously Ryan Day's a really good play caller in his own right. But I think Jeff Brom sees that, he knows that, right? You have a lot of film on him with the Duke game, and even NC State, common opponent, right? I think Jeff Brom's going to scheme some stuff up here for his guys. And Jack Plummer's going to play good football. Consistency has probably been his problem in his college career. That's kind of why he's in his 3rd spot. But also, like, I think he's going to play really well. I really do. I don't blame him, right? We talk about dynamics in college football.
He's played well at home so far.
Exactly. So you have a team that struggled on the road in Louisville, right? Maybe getting a frustrating win, still winning, but frustrating, having to come from behind. And Duke, and Notre Dame, who kind of dominated that first half a little bit. I'm not dominated, but definitely like kind of controlled the game for a while, and then obviously had to come back win. But you're riding a high there. Louisville's, maybe on the low end. It just evens up in college football. It always does. So I think that's one of those. This is one of those weeks where Louisville catches Notre Dame just in a bad spot, and it's no shame to Notre Dame. I think Marcus Freeman's a really good coach. I've been really impressed with him. But I think Jeff Brom. I think he's getting excited for this. We've seen him with Purdue against really good teams, put up a lot of points, a lot of points, and I think he does that here with Louisville as well.
Is Jeff Brom a better coach than Marcus Freeman?
I was about to ask you that because we talked about that last week with Mike Elko and Marcus Freeman.
I think Jeff Brom's a better coach than Marcus Freeman.
If you have to say, like, do I trust Jeff Brom play calling versus Marcus Freeman as a defense coordinator, right? A defensive mind, I'll take Jeff Brom's offense. I think he's better offense. I do think Marcus Freeman. I mean, there's
I'll take Jeff Brom's game management too, time management, clock management,
yeah, player management. I do think there's a reason why Marcus Freeman is at Notre Dame and Brom is at Louisville, and no shame to Brom. I think, and in Louisville, right? Louisville is obviously a pretty good job. The reason he left Big Ten money for that Louisville job, but recruiting wise, which does not help him in this game, right? Yet, right? He'll get his guys in there eventually with Marcus Freeman, obviously a better recruiter. But if you're talking for 60 minutes and this week in pregame and getting your guys ready to go, I think Marcus Freeman's a good motivator, right? One of the better ones in the sport. But Brom, man, he's a brilliant dude. I'm very familiar with him in the Big Ten West, being a Minnesota guy myself. Yeah, he can coach. He can flat out coach. That was a big time hire for Louisville. There was just reason why there's a lot of excitement for them, other than maybe the schedule that they had to play. But yeah, I do think it's not crazy to say Jeff Brom.
Yeah, I mean, look, last week I took in this scenario, I took the better coach to win the game straight up. Should have happened, just didn't happen.
Should have,
right? This week, I just think Notre Dame. I think the talent gap. I just think Louisville kind of plays into Notre Dame's strengths. That's what I think that is.
Yeah, we'll see on Saturday.
Yeah, so you took Notre Dame to win, Louisville to cover.
I took Louisville straight up.
Whoa. Okay. I did not realize that. Yeah. All right. A little head-to-head action there. Georgia at home versus Kentucky. Two teams that are 5-0. What if I told you Georgia was 0-5 against the spread? I'm sure some of you guys out there, I'm sure some of you guys, if you're watching this, right, you follow college football. You're probably pretty aware of that. But Kentucky's 5-0, man. And they just came off a dominating performance at home against Florida. Devin Leary stinks. Did I say that?
No, he has stunk.
I
think we need to clarify that. It might not be this game, it might not be ever for the rest of his college football career, but he has stunk.
He has stunk this season. He has stunk. So
give me Lynn Bowden back. Give me Lynn Bowden back.
Yeah, give me the absolute dynamic run around like backyard football, sling the rock. Yeah, but in all reality, people have been questioning this Georgia run defense a lot. And look, I get it. It hasn't looked the same, right? It hasn't looked absolutely dominating. And Ray Davis just came off an absolute career day against Florida. This Georgia coaching staff is not going to let that happen. This Kentucky team is one-dimensional. This Georgia defensive staff knows that, and they're going to take advantage of that. Sure. Has Carson Beck been a lot better in the second half? Has he had trouble getting off to quick starts? Yes. Is Carson Beck also second in the SEC in passing yards? Also, yes. Is Carson Beck finding ways to win ball games? Yes. Yes, he is. Give me Georgia to win this game. That's an easy pick for me. But I'm also going to lay 14.5. Believe it or not. I'm going to lay it. I just think that this is a bad matchup for Kentucky. I just think, like, if you have a adapted Georgia defensive staff staring at a Kentucky team at home that is one-dimensional, that can't throw the ball. Now, we said that about Auburn. Jordan Hare's a weird place to play.
They didn't even. How was that game close? They had 80 passing yards.
Auburn,
How is that game
Auburn,
close, man?
all of Auburn's touchdowns came on possessions where they started with the ball inside the 50-yard line.
And Georgia knows that. Kirby Smart is not stupid. What do you think the memo was all week? Don't turn the ball over. End
Yes.
every possession with a kick. Find Brock Bowers every freaking play. Like that's what it was. I just think this is a prime spot. I really feel bad for Kentucky. I think they're in for a tune-up. I think they're gonna get boat raced here. Now, I think if the line, obviously, if the game was at Kentucky, the line would be a lot less. But and it'd be a much different story. I think Georgia at home, a pissed off Georgia at home. We just talked about it in a Notre Dame Louisville breakdown. Kentucky coming off a high, Georgia coming off a frustrating win, coming back at home. It just evens out, and the talented team, in this case Georgia, I think is going to be pissed off. Carson Beck's a really good football player. I'm going to say that. If you don't believe that, he's a really good football player. Right? He gets some hate for that one interception. He had 313 yards at Auburn against a really good defense when it mattered. When it mattered.
Last three possessions, when he needed to score, what did he do? All three of those possessions. Found a
Yeah.
way to score. Whether that
And now,
included Brock Bowers, that was up to him.
he'd be stupid not to use him. You can't punish him for having Brock Bowers on his football team, right? It's like with Marvin Harrison up at Ohio State. He's that kind of impact. Now, I would like to see other guys on that offense, specifically the running backs, right? Running the football better. But they have a talented wide receiver group in its own right. Ladd McConkey finally got healthy last week, right? Dominic Lovett was the big time transfer. Marcus Rosemead, Jack St. Where's he been, right? And then even Rara Thomas from Mississippi State. You'd like to see those guys get involved more. Then you get your explosive plays down the football field. Can maybe back up that defense. Kentucky got a good defense. I think Kentucky's not a bad football team. I think they're in for a rude October, November. I think they got a really tough schedule. I'm happy for them. They got their moment of glory against Florida. Again, though, that was a weird game. They jumped on Florida. They ran the ball really, really well. That's not going to happen against Georgia. And now maybe I'm wrong. Maybe we're both wrong. Maybe this is the new Georgia where Georgia just struggles to put teams away. And eventually they're going to get beat and get hurt. But I don't think this Kentucky team is a team to do that and actually win this football game because, and like we talked about Devin Leary, love Devin Leary. I like Devin Leary, right? I think he's better. His better football days are ahead of him. I really do believe he's going to find a stride here.
Okay.
In Kentucky. Hopefully, not this game though, not at Sanford Stadium. And the problem is first of all, we talked Peyton Thorne and Robbie Ashford ran for 8 yards a carry against Georgia. That's why they ran the ball so well. That's not who Devin Leary is, right? So as good as Ray Davis is, right, and as productive as he's been, it's harder to run the football with just one running back against Georgia, right? We've seen elite defenses how to attack them is running the ball in multiple ways, whether it's your extended running game in your quick passing game, which is where maybe you have some success with your explosive receivers, quick passes there, bubble screens, quick slants, whatever it is, pop passes. But I just don't think they're going to be able to run the ball. I think it's going to be pissed off Georgia team. Talented team, pissed off, coming back home, never a good recipe.
Yeah, I agree. And look, people are like, oh, Auburn ran for over 200 yards against Georgia. If you take away that one Peyton Thorne 61-yard run, right, they would have run less than 160 or 150 yards, which is a completely different narrative than what we're looking at right now.
They also ran the ball 43 times, and that's not gonna. I don't think Kentucky. Right, they jumped on them 10-0, and Jordan Hare. That's a totally different football game. Sorry, you keep going.
Yeah, well, I was gonna say, let me do some quick math right here. Wait, 19 minus 61 divided by 42. I mean, you take away that one run, Auburn averaged 3.7 yards per carry, which again is an entirely different narrative than, oh yeah, this Georgia run defense is terrible. It's not what it used to be. We get it. We know that. And then you're also going to blame Georgia's. Not yet. Now you're also going to blame Georgia's run game. You're like, well, they can't really run the ball. Well, Kendall Milton's been out. Guess who was practicing last week? Guess who didn't play last week? Guess who might play this week? At home. I'm just saying, like, there's some things. Georgia's getting a little bit more healthy by the day. I think Devin Leary is one-dimensional, or I think Kentucky's offense is one-dimensional. It hasn't looked good in reality. It actually hasn't looked good. Except for running the ball against Georgia, this offense has not looked very clean. So I hate to be here. Yeah. Yeah.
Does Mark Stoops have the best job in college football? Like it, in terms of pay and resources and expectations. Like if he loses this football game by 30 points, nobody's gonna bat an eye.
No one
Nobody's gonna
cares.
bat an eye. But if you're
Yeah, no.
Auburn and you're, Hugh Freeze, right? Gus Malzahn there, right? That is such a brutal job. There is most jobs in the SEC, I'll argue, are not worth, are very, very unfair expectations, right? Not Kentucky, man, for whatever reason. And it's a good program. It's got good resources. And for whatever reason, they just, because the basketball team, maybe, they just, he always gets a pass. And it's not, I think he's had good football teams. I'm not saying he's a pass, but I think the expectation there is let's just win 7 games, 8, 10 games, maybe every once in a while.
Yeah, I mean, if they go 1-6 the rest of the way this season, Mark Stoops, his job is more than secure. I mean, he's coming back next year. They're like, "Hey, how do we build it?" I mean, first of all, also Mark Stoops has done a good job in the transfer portal. I think getting like good guys, getting the right guys. Since
Well,
this
I mean,
transfer
Devin
portal has been a
Leary,
thing. Yep.
Devin Leary was good, a good get. Ray Davis,
Yeah,
obviously, the
yeah, it
running
was a good
back.
get. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So I'm not a Kentucky hater. I'm just saying, like, let's relax. This Georgia team is still good. All right, this Georgia team is still good.
Don't make assumptions on just one football game, 1 week of football. Don't make assumptions on it. Matters. Everything matters, but it doesn't. It's not everything.
The Washington State Cougars are headed to the Rose Bowl to play the UCLA Bruins. Uh, two teams that you and I were both high on at the beginning of the season. You were more so high on Washington State, and I was more so high on UCLA. But that's not to say we weren't both high on these teams. Feed me. Well, how about this? Okay, so Washington State's down. Pretty important receiver. Pretty
Yeah,
important receiver. But guess
their
what?
top receiver.
Top, or is Josh Kelly really their top receiver? That's a that's a really good question because I've liked the way that Josh Kelly's played these last couple of weeks. Both of these
Mhm.
teams coming off a bye. How about that? No schedule dynamic favoring in that situation. Both of these teams played really, really close games before their bye week. No schedule dynamic there. The only kind of dynamic that's going on here is the fact that it's in UCLA. That's really
Which is
that's it.
that's just
Like,
why the line is what it is.
yeah. So what are your thoughts in this game right now?
I do think that Victor injury, right? Lincoln Victor, their leading receiver for Washington State, is a big loss, right? He's got some big playability, but also like Josh Kelly, you mentioned, really good receiver. Kyle Williams, really good receiver, right? Out of the backfield, they got some good receivers as well. I'm just gonna go Washington State, man. I cannot stop riding them. I pause. I just think I think they're so good. I Cameron Ward is so fun to watch. I'm rooting for these guys. Jake Dickert and company there with the future of the Pac-12 unknown and their future unknown, right? They continue to show up every week and play really good football. It's exciting football. It's fun to root for, right? And I think UCLA is going to play really good. I think they might win this game. Who knows? But I'm going to take Washington State and the points and the cover. I don't care. Give me it all. I just think they're special. So something's in the air up there in Pullman, Washington, and that's no slight to this UCLA team who I've been impressed with. I thought the Utah win was weird. We talked about it. I still think Utah made a freshman quarterback look like a freshman quarterback, but UCLA had a whole bye week to get Dante Moore ready to face those really good pass rushers in Brendan Jackson and Ron Stone Jr. Right? Figure out ways to help that O line give Dante more pressure, give him confidence to get going and to get his talented receivers and running backs to football. Right? So that's their path to success, obviously offensively, but also Cameron Ward, man, is sensational. Sensational. When is he going to be in the National Heisman context?
Well,
When is that going to happen? And I get
he
it's only
was
October.
he was for a week, and then he had a bye, and then everyone's like, "Oh wait, is it Michael Penix or is it Bo Nix or is it Caleb Williams?" That's what the conversation has been because Cam Ward literally had a bye. It's like Lou
Can I
Holtz.
ask you a question here?
It's like Lou Holtz dropping Ohio State down 5 spots. because they literally just because they didn't even play. So
Poor
funny.
man, poor Lou Holtz. Regardless, though, if you switch Cam Ward and Bo Nix, does Bo Nix do this good on Washington State? Do they beat Oregon State?
I I really like what's his name? The Zach no, not Ben Ben Washbuckle. What's his name? Is that his name?
Ben
Washbuckle?
Arbuckle?
Arbuckle. Ben Arbuckle. That's what I'm talking about. He's the offense coordinator, right?
Yeah,
I'm a big fan of him. I think Bo Nix would also be a really big fan of him as well. I can't say for certain. I do think Bo Nix last year was more consistent than Cam Ward was last year, but I have no reason to like I have no reason to put Cam Ward yet above Bo Nix in terms of like the talent aspect. I think I don't know. I think they're both playing at an insanely high level right now. So
that was
I'm
more
not
my
gonna play
point
that
in
game.
terms of Bo for Heisman, right? Cam Ward should be right up there, and I think it's no secret that Oregon has more talent than Washington State. And I'm getting off topic here because this is a Washington State UCLA breakdown, but I just respect Cam Ward deserves some respect. I'll let you get into the game.
Yeah, yeah. Give me Washington State. Give me the points. Give me them to win. Give me them plus 3.5. Uh, UCLA, look, Dante Moore, if he can't figure out how to protect himself, right, or this offensive line can't figure out how to protect himself, whatever the problem is, sure they had a bye week to maybe figure it out. Came at a good time, but who knows if they figured it out? I'm gonna take a really good pass rush from Washington State. There could be a lot of points scored in this game. In fact, UCLA might run the ball really well, which we haven't seen them do really a ton this year. We've seen them run the
Yeah.
ball, but we haven't seen them run the ball like in a really dominant fashion. Like Oregon State ran the ball pretty decently against Washington State. It wasn't perfect, but they ran the ball well. They just couldn't keep up with Washington State scoring. I do think UCLA's defense is a lot better than Washington State's defense, but I also think that UCLA hasn't really played any like really high explosive offenses this year. It really makes you believe that UCLA is really, really, really good on defense. I still think they are really, really good on defense. I just don't know that we've seen that yet, right? So with that kind of volatility there, we know Washington State's good on both sides of the ball, good enough. We've seen them play Wisconsin. We've seen them play Oregon State. Though both those games were at home, you're asking Cam Ward to go on the road to the Rose Bowl. Is that going to be an electric environment? That has we'll see, I guess. I don't know. It could be bumping. Who knows? Uh, but yeah, feed me.
That's a noon local time kickoff, by the way, I believe.
Yeah, but look, I mean, Washington State's undefeated, right? I mean, they're ranked. Fans could get up for this game. I know Hard Rock was like actually not completely empty when Texas A&M rolled into town week 2. So who knows? Who knows? But yeah, give me Washington State. I'm with you. Let's keep riding. Let's keep riding the Cougs. We took them on against Oregon State. Let's keep riding. Let's go. This is a wagon.
It's really fun to continue report. One more point I'll add in terms of Washington State. I do think they've struggled to run the ball with their running backs this year. And I think UCLA has obviously been really good against the run this year, specifically in that Coastal Carolina and Utah games, which are kind of games I'd focus on in terms of, judging how good this defense is. Obviously, Utah's offense is what it is. But they run the ball pretty well at times. And then Coastal Carolina did not run the ball very well at all. But obviously, this Washington State passing game is just different than everything that they have seen so far. I do think Grayson McCall and Sam Pickney at Coastal Carolina, really good football players, obviously NFL players in their own right. But Cam Ward is a stud. And I think it doesn't even matter if you can't run the ball because he's just that good at making plays and extending drives and just finding receivers down the football field. And like, they're just so explosive. They're just so explosive. And that at any point, you saw it against Oregon State, you saw it against Wisconsin, where they just get, bam, 21 points just like that. And it's like, what just happened? And then the game's out of hand or it's totally different than what it would have been. Right. And with a young quarterback, right, I get it, he's at home, which you love for UCLA. That's the kind of thing that just like you almost can't recover from at times.
Yeah, I will say, this will be the best pass rush that Washington State has faced this year, for sure.
Latu's
So
good.
yeah, but now granted, Washington State, it's not like they haven't faced pass rush, right? They faced teams that can rush the passer, but nothing like this so far. I don't think.
But also all off season they saw Brendan Jackson and Ron Stone right every day in
Yeah,
practice. I get it.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
different. It's
You're right.
different in the game, but also they know what an elite edge defender looks like in the Pac-12.
LSU at Missouri. Hey, two teams that national media has going like this, opposite directions.
Which
Here's
is
my thought though.
crazy.
How much though is LSU going in this direction? Is that being exaggerated a little bit? Because Jaden Daniels, if not for these two losses, would be the favorite to win the Heisman right now.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. There's no doubt about that at all.
And Missouri, they're 5-0. They had a really good win against Kansas State at home. But that was really the only game where it looked like they played 4 quarters of really, really good football. Vanderbilt, I guess. But have they really looked like a team that can win this ball game? I'm asking you.
Yes, and now I do think LSU's been vulnerable in the games. Their secondary, everyone knows it's the worst kept secret in college football. LSU has a bad secondary, very very bad secondary. Obviously, Luther Burden is a stud. He might be the best wide receiver in the SEC. If not, he's one of them for sure. And Brady Cook has played extremely well this year. I'll give him a ton of credit. 11 touchdowns, 0 interceptions on the year against some pretty good teams in terms of, you talked about Kansas State, Memphis even is a good American football team. Vanderbilt's, Vanderbilt, whatever. But can they really expose Jaden Daniel? I'm sorry, this LSU defense enough to keep Jaden Daniels right, like behind them? Like LSU could score on every possession this game, right? They really could, and Missouri could do that as well. But I don't quite trust Brady Cook enough to do that, and it helps being at Missouri, I think, tremendously. Obviously, the atmosphere, undefeated Missouri, welcoming LSU, where you really believe you have a chance to win this football game. That crowd's going to be nuts. Doesn't matter if it's 11 a.m. kickoff. That crowd's going to be nuts. We saw it against Kansas State. That was a really good atmosphere. I'm going to go LSU, though. Again, I picked them last week, and they let me down against Ole Miss. Different. These two teams are very different in terms of Missouri and Ole Miss. And the explosiveness that they bring. I think Luther Burden obviously incredible, like I talked about. But I'm going to take LSU, and I'll take the 5.5 points
Yeah, I'll say Theo Weiss is not bad either for Missouri over there. Cody Schrader's been
for sure.
running the ball really well. Brady Cook has been kind of cooking, not gonna lie. And at home, and that's when they played well this year. They played well at home. I've struggled with this game a lot. I think this line opened at 6.5. It's dropped down to 5.5. A lot of people on Missouri because of this LSU defense. Uh, Missouri won the Kansas State game because of explosive plays. And even with explosive plays, they only found a way to put up 30, right?
Yeah.
What's the number, right, that Missouri needs to put up, right, to beat LSU? That's really what we got to think about. What is that number that Missouri has to put up to beat LSU, right? I think it's 42. I think
Yeah,
they
I was
got
gonna
to
say 38 at the minimum. I think they're gonna have to put up a lot.
I think to win this game, they have to put up a lot, right? So look, my books, I have this as a 41-38 ball game. Give me LSU to win. Give me Missouri to cover. I don't know if that's soft because I'm middling it here, but I think this will still be a close game because of the backdoor. First of all, the backdoor cover is not out of the question either with the way LSU's defense has been operating, especially the secondary. If Missouri's trying to sling the ball down the field, I just think, like, once again, I know LSU's on the road, but just give me. I don't regret taking LSU last week at all. I have zero regrets about that. They should have won that game outright, and they should have covered. Give me LSU again, right? I won't take them to cover this time because Columbia has been bumping. Everyone's excited about Missouri. Uh, there's just no way that this LSU team falls to 3-3. It just can't
Is
happen.
there? Is there?
It
Is
just
it?
cannot happen. Feed me LSU to win, but Missouri to cover.
I'll say
So
I was a guy that was lower on that. A lot of other people. I took LSU's under on the year at 9.5. So this would I would love for that to happen. I that obviously clinched that, but I don't think this is a game to lose. I do want to bring up in terms of games. Obviously, that passing defense is what it is. Cody Schrader's a really good running back. I'm glad you brought him up. But if you look at LSU when they've been susceptible on the ground, especially like just susceptible on defense in general, Jordan Travis, KJ Jefferson, Jackson Dart, all those quarterbacks. First of all, really good quarterbacks playing really good football, which Brady Cook is as well. Another thing they have in common that Brady Cook does not is the ability to make plays with their legs. And Jordan Travis obviously is not like a run first kind of guy,
Brady,
like
I'll
maybe
give Brady
Jackson
Cook.
Dart. And
I'll give Brady Cook the credit though. He's pretty mobile. He's athletic.
well, he can scramble on a 3rd and 7 for sure. But in terms of just like quarterback running game being a part of your offense, and like I just don't see it. And I do think that helps LSU. I think it absolutely helps LSU. One less thing that defense to worry about because it's been bad this year so far. But I think, like you said, Jaden Daniels is just playing incredible right now. I just don't think he lets him lose. And I thought they found something last week with Logan Diggs running the football, which was really good to see. And I I, I just don't know how impressed I've been with Missouri. That Kansas State win was good, right? They made a 60 or 50 some yard field goal to win it. That was
61.
obviously and 61 incredibly impressive. But like struggling with Memphis, right? You beat Vanderbilt. Good for you. It's just like,
Struggled with Middle Tennessee State, who, by the way, as we're recording this, getting shellackadaddled by Jacksonville State. Little
yeah. So,
CUSA football
the Q's
night
a
in the
Wednesday.
football night in the CUSA. Oh
How about
yeah,
the CUSA getting a shout out in the SEC video, man? Good for them, man.
good for them.
Good for them.
Good
But
for them.
yeah, oh god, yeah, I'm gonna go LSU here. It's gonna be a good game, though. I definitely want to be watching, kind of on the other screen as Oklahoma, Texas. But I want to watch it. I want to keep an eye on it for sure because, like this could be a fourth quarter game for sure. That beats the surprise of nobody.
Let's talk about Maryland at Ohio State. Uh, people are panicking. I'm not gonna say who these people are, but there are people out there that are panicking, saying Ohio State is in trouble. What do you say to those people?
And what do you want from a team, right? Like, what do you expect from 18 to 23-year-old kids? I get it. It's Ohio State. I get it. You should be walking through everybody. That Indiana win should have been more impressive. But you have to remember, first of all, like college football and progress is not linear, right? It's up and down, right? And if you're Ryan Day, you don't really care if you beat Indiana by 40 or by 10. You don't need style points in college football. You really don't. Not anymore. If you're Ohio State, you don't need style points. If you win the football games, if you beat Michigan, you run win the Big Ten, you're going to be in the college football playoffs, right? That's all you really care about this year. Um, I think they found something a little bit, right, with that Notre Dame win at the end there. I'm hoping Marvin Harrison Jr. is healthy for this game. The bye week was huge for him last week. I think that was a very physical football game, one that maybe we've seen kind of get the best of them sometimes. But this is not Notre Dame. This is not Michigan. This is not Penn State. With all due respect to Mike Locksley in Maryland, Talia Tagovailoa has been a really good college quarterback in his own right at times. Ohio
Especially
State's too
this year.
talented. There's a reason. There's a reason this is a 20-point game, right? 20-point spread. It's at Ohio State. If it's at Maryland, different story for sure. I put the upset meter here, not very concerned. I will go Ohio State to win, obviously. But I'll take Maryland to cover. I think 20 is a lot. Just for the reason I said in terms of coming off a bye, they don't really need to win by 30 points. So not that they're not going to try to win by as many as they can. It's just like they're going to try to get better. I think that's what this game is about, is continuing to get better. And that's crazy that Ohio State can take a team like Maryland and be like, let's just get better today, you know? And I think that's the right mentality to have. Get ready for Penn State and Michigan come, what is that, November on your schedule, or in 2 weeks when you got to welcome Penn State to the horseshoe, not the shoe.
The shoe.
Yeah.
In the shoe, coming off of a bye, The defense is clicking.
Yeah.
I don't understand how there's people that think Maryland could win this game straight up. I'm sorry, Maryland. This is actually Maryland has looked a lot better than I thought that they would. The line was at 7.5 over under win total for the season. I stayed away because like part of their schedule was like, oh, you see 7 wins that were like automatic on their schedule. And then the last like 5, you were like, wow, they could lose all of those pretty easily. This is one of those games. Yeah, I'm not gonna say that Ohio State's gonna blow this team out necessarily, but I have a feeling that it will look like Ohio State, like game control. It'll look like they took over and managed this game very well. I'm gonna take Ohio State to win. I will take Maryland cover just because 20 is a lot in the Big Ten. It's a lot in the Big Ten, especially like Maryland is an upper half Big Ten team.
And I feel terrible for them. And I'm glad you brought up their schedule and their win total this year. I really believe the rest of their schedule, right? I'm looking at it right now. If you're a Maryland fan, you're probably familiar with it. Nobody else in the Big Ten scares you besides the big three, right? You got to go Illinois, who's playing terrible football right now. Northwestern and Nebraska are playing terrible football as well. That's probably the 3 most favorable draws from the other side of the division you could have gotten. And then you finish the season with Rutgers, right? You could go 9-3 and lose all 3 of those games by 3 touchdowns. And Mike Locksley and Maryland are just going to be shunned, and not to the fault of their own. I think they're in a really tough position being in this division. Yeah, you can continue.
Yeah, this is a team. If they were in the Big Ten West, they would be the favorites to win the Big Ten West.
Yes. Yeah, I'll say that. I would say yeah, because Wisconsin has not played well, and Iowa has no quarterback and no offense, and just Iowa. But I do think it'd be interesting in terms of just side note here. I think Maryland's play style and Talia's play style specifically, playing some good defenses in the West week to week, would be really interesting. Really, really interesting. But yeah, like you said, I think that defense Ohio State's really good. And I think Talia is going to struggle a little bit. Obviously, Maryland's 5-0. I haven't quite been as impressed. I do think some of their final scores were a little bit misleading, right? In terms of how they actually played in those football games. But they're 5-0, right? They're 2-0 in conference already. Doesn't matter. I don't really judge Maryland on what happens in this game. I don't really think anyone should in terms of to lose by 21, right? That's supposed to happen. You were supposed to lose by 20 points anyways. You're going on the road to an elite football team. It's going to come down to how does Ohio State play, right? If Ohio State shows up remotely, they're going to win by 10 points. If they do not show up at all and Maryland plays to the best of their ability, then you have a fourth quarter football game. But yeah, I just trust this staff to get going. And like you said, the defense gives them that cushion, which they haven't had in a while. And that's where you see them lose to games like Iowa, like Purdue in the past, in games that they shouldn't have lost. But because of how good their defense is playing right now, it just won't let that happen. It just won't let that happen.
Yeah, if you just want to look at coaching matchup right now, forget Ryan Day and Mike Locksley. Let's talk about Maryland, Josh Gaddis, Kevin Sumlin going up against Jim Knowles. Like, who are you taking in that? Like, we know who you're taking in that situation. Come on. What are we doing here? Now, granted, Talia's played really well to the credit of Josh Gaddis and Kevin Sumlin there as co-offensive coordinators. I think this Ohio State defense would just be too much. A little Mountain West preview. The first one of the season, baby. The first
And they
G5
deserve it,
preview of the
man.
season. Boy, dude, they deserve it. This Fresno State team, AP ranked 27 at 5-0. 5-0. Wyoming, 4-1, with their only loss being to Texas in a game where Texas had to come back in that game when it was in Laramie. These are
And this game's in Laramie too, by the way.
this game
This
is
game's in
also in Laramie.
Laramie.
We're gonna have some 10-mile-per-hour crosswinds there. Oh yeah.
Some elevation. They asked Fresno State's coach about it, by the way. They asked him, they said, what are you going to do about elevation? He kind of dismissed it like you kind of have to do. But Laramie, man, Laramie happens, man.
Yeah, I mean, looking at injury wise, right? Wyoming, pretty healthy, right? You lose Pellissier at wide receiver. Wasn't really big. Your passing game isn't really your identity anyways. It's been your running game. McNeely goes down with the torn ACL in fall torn ACL in fall camp. Whaley, 8.3 yards per carry since he's coming back from injury.
The
He
Northern
is
Illinois guy, man.
just dynamic. He's running the ball hard. Well, he is awesome. He is awesome, and a huge reason why this team is playing the way that they are. Fresno State, Dean Clark missed last game. Their safety, I think he might miss again, but their walk on
It
Braca
looks like
Bradshaw.
I'll real quick. I'll interrupt here. It looks like Dean Clark has been practicing.
Yep.
And he practiced last week, right? There, he looks better in practice this weekend. Nobody knows anything, but if you're a Fresno State fan, you're obviously crossing your fingers. But like you said, yeah, they're playing well. They're playing well.
Yeah,
The back can play well.
yeah, I mean, well, 6 tackles, 1.5 sacks, and a pass breakup, deflection, or whatever. That's a heck of a game for a walk on. We love walk ons, especially when they're balling like that. Uh, I think that the X factor in this game for Fresno State is obviously Mikey Keene and Eric Brooks. I think so. I mean, well, look, we talked about Mikey King like in the preseason, right? When we were talking about drafting fantasy quarterbacks. We had some G5 alternate selections that we had to make, and one of my honorable mentions was Mikey Keene. So he's been playing absolutely fantastic football. I mean, they're 5-0 right now. They're 5-0. Now, with that being said, how good are these teams that Fresno State has actually played? They played Purdue week 1 at home.
It's still
on the
impressive
road.
going to Purdue. It was at Purdue.
It was at Purdue. It was on the road.
Purdue. Still impressive to go in there and get a win. And they went in to Arizona State and just blanked them. But
Eastern Washington,
bad.
double overtime. Nevada is horrible at football. They're terrible at football. Kent State,
Not much better.
Also pretty terrible at football. So when I look at Fresno State, right, and you look at the attack, and like you're just looking at numbers straight up, right? Numbers need to have context. Okay. Fresno State's 16th in the country in yards per game allowed on the run, on the ground, right? You gotta also remember they've been up in a lot of these games, right? Eastern Washington doesn't run the ball. Okay. Purdue doesn't run the ball a ton. They do. But it's like a Graham Harrell kind of run the ball. It's like run, when we see an open box kind of deal. These teams don't run the ball because they've been up on these teams. So that's a pretty misleading stat right there. Also, 10-mile-per-hour crosswinds with the elevation. Like, teams have struggled to throw the ball. Quinn Ewers looked like a pedestrian quarterback in Laramie when he went there. He looked like a pedestrian quarterback. Now, Mikey King is athletic. But I don't know that Fresno State's ground game is all that impressive. Give me Wyoming plus the 6. Give me Wyoming straight up to win this football game. Peasley's good enough at quarterback. He's good enough. Let's not turn the ball over. Let's win the field position battle. And let's run the heck out of the ball with Whaley. Let's run the heck out of the ball with Whaley. I don't think this Fresno State run defense, and I'm not saying it's on fraud alert, but I'm just saying I don't think it is. It's exactly what the numbers are telling me, or what the numbers are telling you, right? But and Wyoming's pass defense has been really good, obviously because they play in Laramie, right? The run defense is what's been bad. If Fresno State wants to win this big game, they're gonna have to run the ball, and I don't know if they want to do that. I don't know if they want to do that.
If this turns into a grinded out football game, right, in the low 20s, right, high teens, it definitely favors Wyoming, right? And that crowd, and the longer Wyoming stays in the football game, weird things happen there. Texas Tech, right? We saw what happened to them. I'm gonna go Fresno State to win, but I'm gonna take Wyoming to cover. And I know that's kind of a cop out, whatever. I just think it's gonna be a really good football game. I just think it's gonna be a really, really good football game that everybody should have their eyes on, right? If you're wondering, it's 7 p.m. game on Fox, national broadcast game. That's awesome. That is awesome for both these programs and the Mountain West, who is a really, really interesting conference, right? Wyoming and Fresno State are obviously two of the better teams in this conference in their own right. There's some really good football teams in this conference. Boise State, it's not a bad football team. UNLV is playing really good football, by the way. And Air Force, obviously, probably the favorite in the conference as of right now. Them in Fresno State. Well, maybe Fresno State's maybe a favorite there. But regardless, looking ahead, these teams still have tough games to win, right? I think Fresno State maybe has the easier schedule a little bit because they do avoid Air Force, but they still have to beat UNLV
That's
at
crazy to
home.
say that. That's a crazy sentence. They avoid Air Force. Gosh,
I know, and I love it though. I love it.
Air Force is awesome this year. They are awesome.
Yeah, but I do think I hope the whole country gets to see that there's some quality football being played out in the Mountain West, specifically with these two football teams.
Specifically, these two football teams. We'll talk
Well,
about these two football teams and Air Force.
and Boise State, and you want
Maybe UNLV too. Maybe
maybe
UNLV.
that is maybe San Diego State's been a real disappointment. I'll say so far, but they've had a tough schedule, opening schedule. But we'll see if they can bounce back. Is that It's what's it? It's still a Michigan coach over there, right? Brady
Brady
Hoke.
Hoke. Oh yeah.
Yeah, which is
The hokey
awesome.
pokey, baby.
Yeah, I do think
Yeah.
Wyoming's quarterback is awesome. I think he's so
He
fun.
just
That was
Pills or Peasley just does enough, dude. Peasley does
he's
enough.
gritty. He's just gritty, man. And sometimes in the G5, grit is awesome. It's just so awesome.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And like anytime you have like this kind of tattoo right here on your throwing arm, that's how you know that that guy's gonna lower his shoulder with the game on the line as a quarterback. 100%.
Wouldn't you be scared to get a tattoo on your throwing arm as a quarterback
No, I don't know.
to
I
damage
we
something?
neither of us have ever gotten tattoo, but it's just like burning like your skin. I guess
I
I don't
guess
know.
so.
Unimportant. Unimportant. All right, here we go. Moving on. We're at our upset meter. We feature four
Uh-oh.
teams every week. Here are the rules. Four teams every week. The spread has to be greater than 10 points. We pick four teams. CD and I talk about it beforehand. And we give our thoughts, right? Is this a cold upset? Is this just not going to happen? Is it mild? Is it like this should not happen, but if it does, that would be pretty crazy. Sweating is like, okay, like if this happens, it's crazy, but it's like, okay, now hindsight, yeah, maybe if we looked at that game a little bit better. Steaming is like, okay, this could very much happen. Piping is like, how is this a 10-point line? Right. So we're looking at Michigan. They're traveling on the
They
road.
are traveling, baby.
They're traveling to the Gophers. What time is that game at? Central time?
I believe it's a 6 o'clock, 6:30 game on NBC.
6:30 on NBC. A little prime time. Prime time. So yeah, this line, I believe it's at 19. I'm gonna pull it up right now. While I'm pulling that up, we can talk about Michigan played really good football last week against Nebraska. I think they've literally just played with their food up until this point. They got into Big Ten play and said, okay, we're not gonna play with our food. JJ McCarthy's looking like one of the better quarterbacks in the country. For me, this is cold. These are two teams trending in opposite directions right now.
In terms of trending, I would say as an unbiased Minnesota fan, like we all are, I do think they played their best half of football, and whatever that means for you, this past half, where they played really, really well against, albeit Louisiana, but that's still Louisiana's not a bad football team, and regardless, playing good football is playing good football, right? That's important. I do think Michigan is just way too talented, all levels of the football, quarterback, O line, running backs, wide receivers. Their defense is loaded. Yes, they're going to Minnesota, and I'll say Minnesota is one of the more underrated environments. I do think they really get up for big games.
Huntington
Especially
Bank, baby.
a night game goes really, really hard in there. But there's a reason why it's a 90-point spread. I don't have too much faith in our Gophers. I do think Michigan's just that good, and I do think Ethan Kaliakmanis sometimes tries to do too much. Right, he's still a young quarterback learning how to play the position. Where has Brevin Spanford been all year? Kind of non-existent. Maybe he breaks out, maybe he doesn't. But JJ, Blake Corum, hopefully Donovan Edwards gets going a little bit. He's kind of been a disappointment so far. And I think this Gopher defense has been vulnerable the past 3 weeks. Really vulnerable. Super impressed with what Michigan did. Went into Nebraska, which is not an easy place to play. Silenced the crowd real quick and just dominated them. And I think they do that the same here
Dude,
with
I mean,
Minnesota.
Fans were leaving in the second quarter. It was crazy.
Which at Nebraska does not happen. That is
Uh,
crazy.
I think halftime is kind of that bar that like I think people it's always a sellout, right? There's gonna be people there at kickoff. I think halftime gets out of hand, right? There's a lot of good tailgating out there in Lincoln, so I think people go out there and tailgate, watch the game. But second quarter though, that before halftime, that's impressive. Before halftime, that's you get something's up when that's going on there. So that line's 19, 19 at 20. If you're better, make sure you shop those lines. Make sure you get the best one there. So I'm put them in. I'm gonna put them in cold for sure.
Mhm.
Next up, USC Trojans. They get a home game. Why are they on the upset meter though? They're playing Arizona. USC has not been playing good football defensively. Gosh, if you thought I was about to slander Caleb Williams, you're absolutely out of your mind.
As a
Especially as
former
Bears,
Chicago Bear, we cannot say that.
as a Chicago Bear,
future
as a Chicago Bears
Bear.
fan, cannot be slandering Caleb Williams at this point because who knows? Who knows? But this line at 21 and a half, that's a big spread, dude. But this defense, like this USC defense stinks. And you know what? I know Jaden Delore isn't playing, which maybe your upside, your ceiling isn't there. But at the same time, dude, like just not turning the ball over, is a big deal. And that's what Jaden Delore loves to do. I mean, every morning it's a bowl of Cheerios and an interception. I mean, that's what it is for him. Every morning. That's what he has for breakfast. So I think this one's not quite steaming, but it might be like it could be a sweaty game for USC. It might be a little bit more than sweating for me.
I think it's right in between there if we had a term for it. I do think in terms of covering the line, I think Fafita is honestly better for you. If you're a better, you probably love that happening, which maybe we'll find out later in the show. Stick around for Dawson's Diner. But
stick around.
But I do think Jaden Delora does give you that upside to actually pull off a win, in what we kind of forget about sometimes, like in college football, that's kind of what matters is winning the football game. And getting upset isn't about covering the spread, it's about winning the football game. But I do think their defense is vulnerable. We talked about it. I think maybe that offense is frustrated having to go out and score a ton of points all the time. And who knows with that locker room dynamic there. I'm not saying anything. I just been on football teams, like that can be frustrating, right? They're human beings, they're college students. And Arizona has talent on the offensive side of the football. We saw what they did to Washington and played a really close game against them. But it's nice for USC to come home. That's why I'm not quite in the steaming piping, range, upper echelon upset meter. But it's definitely something to monitor. Where I think in the second half there, you can see a close football game, and you might have to turn on the TV right away, because of what can happen there and how vulnerable that defense can be at times.
Absolutely. I'm gonna throw that one right there in between Sweat and Steaming. Next up, Kansas State. They're playing Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State has not played good football this year. Who's playing quarterback?
That's an understatement. That's an understatement. They have played just bad football.
They've played bad. Football. They just lost to Iowa State, but
they had a bye week.
They had a bye week, and weird things happen in Stillwater. And right when you think you have Mike Gundy in the corner, it's exactly the moment he puts you in an absolute full Nelson. So, I personally don't think, because of the way Oklahoma State's been playing football, right? I think to have an upset, to be higher on the meter, the underdog team needs to be playing good football.
Yeah.
And they get the credit for being at home in this game. I don't think it's quite sweating. I don't think it's quite sweating, but it could be. You can make an argument, I think, that it could be sweating, right? And who knows? In the fourth quarter, this could be a one-possession game. But to me, like, if this happened, it would be pretty crazy to me. It'd be a pretty crazy upset for me, for sure.
Yeah, I think this is more about the amount of respect we have for Mike Gundy, and what we've seen and what we've learned not to do is to not put Mike Gundy in the corner and then bet against him. That's just 8 times out of 10, it's gonna not work out in your favor. But Kansas State's also coming off a bye, right? Where they had a disappointing loss to Missouri, bounced back with a nice win against UCF, and now they look to really make a statement going into the back half of their schedule, starting in October here. And I think we're both pretty still high on Kansas State, which is not why I'm sweating, or I'm quite like steam and sweating area, but I do think it's going to be something to monitor, right? Stillwater, Oklahoma is not easy to play. Like you mentioned, you hit it all on the nail there. I completely agree.
Yeah, that one for me is sitting in mild, not quite sweating. Not quite sweating. Last game that we'll talk about today in the upset meters, Miami. Miami hosts Georgia Tech. It's a 21-point spread right there. That's a pretty big spread. And Georgia Tech has played some good football this year at times, for sure. Now, they are coming off an absolutely brutal, brutal loss to none other than Christopher's favorite team, Bowling Stinking Green.
The Power Five killers.
The Power Five killers. Corsidy is a Gophers fan if you're just tuning in for the first time. So he knows a little something about Bowling Green. And in the same way that I know a little bit about
double
Appalachian
digit
State.
loss though. Double digit loss at
Yeah,
home.
and they were up. And they were up
blowing
big.
a lead. That is now the thing is in college football, right? One or two things can happen, right? Maybe three, right? Where nothing really happens and you just kind of just go out your season. Where you get demoralized and it's train off the rails. In a first year head coach, you know, you don't quite know because how much buy-in does he have in this locker room, right? You think he'd have a lot because his job security is probably pretty high, right? Or you get a team that's just pissed off and starts playing really, really good football. But also, Miami's playing really good football right now. And I don't, it doesn't almost matter how
Very
good Georgia
good.
Tech plays. I think Miami's just a really good football team right now. There's a reason they're in the top 20. There's a reason they're 4-0, and they've been really, really impressive in all four of those games. I get it. Miami, Ohio is not great. Bethune-Cookman, right? Enough said. And Temple is terrible, terrible. But I think it's A&M, they dominated them. I thought was maybe not dominated, but they really, really impressed. And they won
Second
by
half they
15
did.
points.
In the second half they did.
Exactly. And I think that says a lot about that team and Mario Cristobal and the culture they have there going down in Miami. And again, it's at home, right? That's a big deal. Not having to go to Georgia Tech.
Yeah, just not playing at Bobby Dodd is a big deal. So I'm this to me is not even mild. I don't think. I think Miami is a team that people are not talking about enough as a potential playoff contender. It's hard to say when a team's barely 4-0, but their offensive line is elite. Their defensive line is playing well. They have two coordinators that are absolute hits for hires. Tyler Van Dyke is playing at an insanely high level. Their secondary looks good. I just don't see it, man. I don't see it. Are you in the boat with me? Not even mild is where I'm gonna go.
Yeah, it frustrates me to say this as a Georgia Tech over better. I did have them. That Bowling Green killed me, but yeah, I think Miami's playing too good football right now. Hayes King is fine, but he's not going to do enough to win this football game, and to really make him sweat.
I agree. Let's go stick him right there. Let's talk about little Dawson's Diner, eh? Okay.
Bro, we're not going to throw that first one on there. For those of you listening on YouTube, our Spotify audience, I'm sorry. You're looking at Texas A&M plus 115 as the first bet. And I'm not shaming on it, but I just want everybody to know he's going to be at the game. He's going to be all in maroon, right? Wearing is he Miles Garrett jersey? You going to be wearing that?
No, I'll be wearing my game day outfit includes my retro Aggie hat, an A&M polo, jorts, boots, socks rolled up way too high, and my Texas A&M belt.
Your lucky belt.
So I'm look, I don't like. First of all, no one has to ride these picks, but this is a legit.
We advise people to bet responsibly, right? Real quick, interrupting. Like bet responsibly. Do not let us influence your picks. This is just what he's going with.
That's what I'm going with. But if I was to convince you, better quarterback, better offensive line, better rope weapons at receiver, better defensive line. So, and at home. So that's what did it for me. In fact, this line's moved down. I believe it's actually either -105 or even right now. So got that one early. So maybe not value right now if you can't get it at 115 right now. If you can find something at 110, I would still take that. I think that would be some value. Washington State plus 3.5 We talked about this game earlier in this episode. If you're just watching, I mean, obviously, if you're here, you heard us talk a lot about Washington State. Just come on. Give me 3.5 points for a team that's just playing absolutely great football right now. Uh, Oklahoma, Texas under 16.5. I think I talked about this last week, about a look ahead spot where I was looking to take this under in this game. Could explosive plays happen? Absolutely. Uh, I just see this game going under. I see this game where two defenses, two teams that are going to try to rely on running the ball. And when OU can't, they're going to try to throw the ball into that interior pressure. OU is not going to score points. Look, if Texas blows them out, I mean, 42-14 covers this spread. So I'm kind of relying on Texas's defense here to really, really step up. Texas Tech at Baylor, over 58.5. This one's actually at 60.5 now, which is pretty brutal.
I
I think
love
you can
that.
get I think you can get 59.5 somewhere, but I still think 60.5 is fine. I still like this over. Both teams do not know how to stop the run. Neither one of them. And Baylor has Blake Shapen back. They just came off an absolute electric game playing against UCF. Texas Tech, Joey McGuire said it. Said we are one of the best teams EPA wise in college football. Well, part of that is right. They run into good boxes, right? They're not running into defenses that are being stacked. So what they ran could do is put more guys in the box potentially, kind of stop that run attack. But this run game has really been helping out Baron more. Houston, that game, Donovan Smith looked like an absolute Heisman Trophy contender in that game. Yeah, let's count for a big Blake Shapen. Not on Dawson's Diner, but a pick that I actually did take was Baylor +1. When that line crossed over. So it's in Waco. It's not on Dawson's Diner. Just be careful if you think about betting that game. I didn't put it on Dawson's Diner because I don't feel great about it. But and then the late edition, which I put in yesterday, or actually this morning. Give me Arizona +21.5. We talked about this game. It's USC. Look for USC to be up 28 points. And then Arizona to backdoor cover that, baby. That's what I'm talking about. So yeah, Texas A&M +115, Washington State +3.5, OU versus Texas under 60.5, Tech at Baylor over 58.5, Arizona +21.5, and feeling nuts, balls to the wall. I also took Baylor +1, not on Dawson's Diner, just an extra little play. But yeah, so that'll be the plays there. Thank you guys for checking out our Week 6 preview. Gosh, we're almost halfway through the season. It's been an absolute blur. It's been awesome. We love doing this. Thank you guys so much for your supports. Be sure, if you made it through this whole video, right, and you just wanted to send one individual team, you're like, oh, I got a buddy who's a big Ohio State fan. He would have loved to hear this coverage, this game against Maryland. You could just send the cut up. We're going to have all these videos cut up individually, all 8 games plus the upset meter. So you can just send that video to your friend. Make sure you guys make sure you guys subscribe. If you like the content, like the video. It's that easy. It's that simple. Thank you guys so much. CD, you got anything for us?
Let's go. Another week. Just enjoy while it lasts, man. It's October now. A lot of great games. Giants are going to start falling. Who is going to be, we don't know, but stuff's going to happen this weekend. That's going to be like, wow. And we can't wait to talk about it on Sunday's show. So stay tuned for that, or Monday's show for you guys.
Absolutely. And we will see you guys in the next one.